The story begins with our main protagonist, a little girl who is standing in front of her father, asking her to read the paper on the table. She was shaking while reaching for the paper and asked what it was. Her father crossed his arms and replied that it was an adoption agreement. "Since Lawrence is officially registered, I don't need to keep you anymore. Hurry up and sign here," he said. The little girl, Teresia Oblin, was puzzled upon hearing it, as she never thought her own father would abandon her. A few days ago, her younger brother, Lawrence, was screaming, calling Teresia a beggar and accusing her of stealing his snack. Teresia really did, but it was only a cookie. She was hiding on the tree branch and said, "So noisy, I can't believe something like that shares half of my blood." Lawrence was on the ground, asking Teresia to stop hiding, but Teresia wouldn't show herself to her younger brother. Beside Teresia was her ghost friend Tommy telling her that her mouth was a real disaster. Teresia smiled at him and said she learned it from him. Tommy floated above Teresia, and Teresia was happy watching him. Tommy is her only friend in the mansion. He's been with her since before she was even born. From the moment she was born, she could see the dead. Not just see them, but she could also touch them. It's not like she could say it. She doesn't actually remember being a baby, but one day, her mother told her. Her mother, Inpia Oblin, was the wisest and the most beautiful person in the world. Not that it matters now, since she's gone. And before Teresia could even process her mother's death, the man who called himself her father brazenly brought his mistress and illegitimate child into the mansion. As if that wasn't enough, her half-brother Lawrence was practically dying to tear her apart. Teresia had to endure their cold, judging stares. But, no matter how much they looked down on her, she fought hard to stand her ground. In the end, Teresia Oblin survived among them just fine. After everything she had been through, like hell would she'd be scared of Lawrence's pathetic threats. While Lawrence was searching for her, she decided to go see her mother. She managed to go inside the mansion without Lawrence noticing, with the help of Tommy. She went straight to her mother's portrait, which was only in the hallway. She was staring at her mother, and Tommy suddenly reminded her that her mother was truly a good person. While staring at the portrait, Teresia noticed it had gotten dusty. She became sad when she remembered how jolly her mother was, and she missed her so badly. She was startled when she heard Lawrence heading upstairs while calling her. "Wow, loud much," she uttered while checking Lawrence from above. She planned to sneak out before Lawrence got any closer, but Lawrence came before she disappeared. "Trying to run away again? Apologize to me right now," Lawrence angrily said while pointing at Teresia. Teresia didn't respond, which annoyed Lawrence. His face became reddish. He was claiming he had been way too nice to Teresia. According to him, his father saved Teresia's grandfather from going bankrupt, and as thanks, he begged him to marry his daughter. But his daughter was so ungrateful and kept mouthing off, which was why she's dead. Teresia was speechless for a moment. She asked Lawrence to repeat what he just said. Lawrence was very confident that he was saying facts. Teresia pointed at him and said, "Shut your filthy mouth." She ran toward him, and Lawrence was shaking. He raised his arm while telling Teresia she had lost her mind. Teresia was smiling. She was waiting for Lawrence to hit her, since she believed that if it happens, she could beat the crap out of Lawrence and call it self-defense. However, Tommy interfered since he didn't want anyone to hit his friend Teresia. Teresia was afraid that Tommy would push her brother. She rushed to stop him, but then Tommy already did it without thinking about what was going to happen to Teresia. Lawrence was falling from the upper floor down to the first floor. When Lawrence fell, it made a commotion. Everyone was startled. The maids panicked when they found out it was Lawrence. Teresia's father and stepmother also saw it themselves. They immediately rushed to Lawrence, and the lady woke him up. Teresia was scared. She wasn't moving at all. Her father looked at her with anger and disappointment. Standing still with a clenched fist made Teresia believe she's screwed. "Teresia Oblin, get down here this instant," her father said with an angry tone. After the incident, Teresia was locked in her room for 3 days. They brought her food every now and then, but nothing decent. Of course, Tommy was still with her. Tommy asked if she was still mad, and she sighed and realized that what was done is done, and she's also used to this anyway. She looked at her friend Tommy and told him she was not mad anymore. As of now, she's the rightful heir to the Oblin Viscountcy. Her father only gained his title by marrying her mother, so adding Lawrence, a bastard, to the family register wouldn't be easy. If Teresia disappears, she believes that the surrounding nobles will tear their house apart in an instant, so she is sure they can't just get rid of her that easily, or so she thought. Not until this moment when she received the adoption agreement and read it herself. She could not believe that her own father would send her away for adoption, and that it was to the ghost Duke, Everan. She was speechless, she was scared, but she knew that her father was serious. 5 years ago, the Emperor of the Kremwiden Empire, seeking to keep the Duke of Everan in check, forced him onto the battlefield. But with victory after victory, House Everdan's renown only soared. And the Emperor, displeased by their growing fame, issued a cruel command to exterminate the Mortia tribe. It was a tribe in the western border forests, known as those who aid the rest of the dead. The Emperor accused the Mortia tribe of summoning wicked spirits to harm the people, but in truth, it was a calculated move to thrust Duke Everan into crisis. The order to slaughter those who could speak with the dead was deeply unsettling, yet defying imperial command was treason, so Duke Everan and his knights drew their swords in grim silence. Thus, innocent blood was spilled. Before falling, the last surviving leader of the Mortia tribe laid a terrible curse upon Everan by saying, "You will pay for hindering the sacred mission bestowed from the heavens. The honor you've bathed in blood will be dragged through the filth. The wealth that surrounded you will crumble to dust. The eyes that revered you will see only fear and hatred. You wretched sinners shall neither live nor die. Eternal agony shall be your fate." However, the Duke didn't bat an eye at such a chilling curse. He and his knights returned in triumph, greeted with cheers and admiration. But the curse didn't end there. From that day forth, everyone within the Everan estate, the Duke included, became ghosts. To be exact, they retained human hearts, but their bodies became invisible. Even with transparent bodies, they could still hold objects or wear clothes, and they could see and talk to each other. But to others, only floating clothes and items in empty air were visible, making them appear as ghosts. Afterward, it became difficult to act outside, and they tried hiring agents, but all fled in fear from the Everan mansion. As a result, the rumors about House Everan worsened day by day. Their honor fell to the ground. Stripped of honor and unable to govern properly, even their treasure vaults ran dry. The people who once hailed House Everan now scoffed at their downfall, as if they had never sung their praises at all. They noticed that it was loud every night, like there was a party raging in that place. Even things disappeared one by one every day. They also heard a rumor that a ghost pushed a man down the stairs to his death. Thus, House Everan came to be known as the living dead, a ghost dukedom shrouded in fear and whispers. In the aftermath of Everdan's downfall, the Emperor, ever the actor, put on a show of mercy, proclaiming the end of a decade-long war. Whether out of genuine goodwill or pure strategy, Duke Everan responded with a letter of gratitude and quietly vanished from the public eye. Before retreating, he left a final message, which was to contact him if any noble family was willing to offer a child for adoption as the heir of House Everan. But with the estate steeped in eerie rumors, no parent dared send their child into the clutches of a cursed house. And just like that, 5 years slipped by. Back in the present time, Teresia's father informed her that the Duke of Everan was looking for an heir. Teresia still doesn't know what to say. She's not even scared of the whole ghost Duke nonsense or whatever. She doesn't care about their rumors or bad reputation. But it's hard for her to leave the mansion filled with memories of her mother. She'd rather die. She threw away the adoption agreement and told her father she was not going no matter what. Her father stood. She bravely stared at him with clenched fists, but it's very clear how scared she was because of her eyes. Her father chuckled and proclaimed that he guessed there was no choice if she was that stubborn. Of course, Teresia was clueless. Her father became serious and told her he will just dig up her mother's grave and dump it in the fields. He walked around and added that he would also get rid of the painting in the portrait room, a painting of someone who died from some mysterious illness. How ominous, he uttered. Teresia was shaking in anger. She squeezed her dress and screamed, telling her father she wouldn't let it happen. Her father then belittled her by questioning her about what she could do as an 8-year-old kid. He bent his knees and smiled at his own daughter, then said, "Do you think throwing a tantrum will let you beat a hunting dog raised in the Viscount's estate?" Teresia was frustrated. Still, she knew her father was right, that she was just a powerless child. It's sad for her to think there's nothing she can do. She deduces that even the ghosts can't leave where they once lived, so they can't go beyond the mansion. She was sure no one could help her. While thinking, her father smiled at her and concluded that she now clearly understood. She was shocked when her father informed her they were leaving at first light. He walked away while telling the kid she'd better obey silently, unless she wanted things to get ugly. Her father left her puzzled. She was standing still while thinking if she really had to leave the mansion this way. She recalled some of her memories with her mother, including the portrait tomb and even the ghosts who've always stayed by her side. After a few minutes of thinking, she suddenly chuckled. She raised her head and smiled. Since it came this far, she decided to make damn sure her name was written in imperial history as the child who was disowned faster than anyone else. At the same time, a guy was sitting on a chair inside his office, holding a piece of paper and uttering Teresia Oblin's name, who was the eldest daughter of Viscount Oblin and a young child who had just turned 8. The guy proclaimed that Teresia was far too young. He stood and removed the white cloth covering the mirror. He stared at himself, a headless man. He added that he would be lucky if Teresia didn't just burst into tears at the sight of him. He was also wondering if a mere child could really endure life in this den of monsters. This guy was known as the Ghost Duke, Valerian Everan. Valerian wanted to protect Everan. He felt sorry for Teresia, but he had no other choice. Right now, he called his subordinate, Sebastian, and commanded him to personally escort Teresia Oblin to him. Sebastian accepted the order and proclaimed he would make preparations as soon as possible and depart at once. Before Sebastian left, Valerian asked him for a favor, to be gentle with the kid and make sure she didn't get frightened. Back to Teresia, the time of her departure came. She then informed Tommy that she was getting adopted into the Everan noble family, and of course, knowing the fact that they wouldn't see each other again, Tommy was sad. He was crying, asking Teresia if she was really going. Teresia told him to stop crying. She smiled at him and added, "I really have to go now. Are you going to send me off in tears?" Before she left, Tommy promised to do his best to protect her mother's memory. He may not be able to visit her mother's grave, but he promised not to let anyone touch her mother's portrait. "How did you know I was going to ask you that? You're such a clever kid." "All right, I'll trust only you," Teresia said, and Tommy replied, "Yeah, just trust me." Teresia then heard a servant informing her that the carriage sent by the Duke's family had arrived. Teresia then bid goodbye to Tommy and promised him that she would be back soon. She told him not to cry and hold it in well even if he missed her. Tommy was puzzled. He was clueless about how Teresia would come back to the mansion. Teresia smiled at him and said, "You'll know when you see it." She then went outside, heading to the carriage. Her father was also outside, telling Sebastian that his daughter was very nervous. Her father then called her with a smile, and she just smiled, knowing that her father was just putting on quite the act as a kind father. Just yesterday, her father was saying he couldn't send a beggar's rag to the Duke's family, treating people like mere goods. She was dressed up, and the total expense cost 450,000 gold barons, including travel costs. The way her father reluctantly handed over the gold pouch was quite amusing for her. Right now, Teresia stared at Sebastian, and she was terrified when she confirmed that the rumors about people from Everan were true. Sebastian was holding a paper. The maid beside him was scared. On the paper was Sebastian's name, and a statement that he would be the one to serve the kid. Teresia was impressed to see Sebastian really looked like a half-ghost. She was startled when her father held her just to warn her to stay quiet and keep herself out of trouble for her mother's sake. He also told her that she might get to live in luxury in a place far above her station if she played her cards right. A part of Teresia was annoyed at her own father, believing that he was threatening her. For now, her father was such a despicable person through and through. She smiled widely at him, which confused her father. She then told him she had a dream last night, and her grandfather appeared in it. She asked her father to lend her his ear for a moment, and her father agreed and moved his ear closer to his daughter's mouth. "You scoundrel!" she screamed while pulling her father's coat. Her father moved away from her while she kept on screaming. "You embezzled the inheritance I left for Inepia and squandered it on gambling. If it's come to this, I'll take the gold you've been hiding." Her father asked her to stop. He was embarrassed, but she was still smiling at him like an innocent child. Her father was annoyed at her, and she smirked at him since she was confident. She knew where her father's gold bars were. She walked away, thinking that her father would be too worried about his gold being stolen to sleep if the rumors spread. And she knew something would happen once her stepmother, Carlotta, found out that he secretly hid such a large fortune. She was aware that her father was quiet about it all the time, but now, things for her were different. She then approached Sebastian and told him she was ready to go. She entered the carriage while wondering how long this love of the century would last. While sitting, she was telling her father to say hello to her mom for her. Sebastian, at this moment, was shocked by the fact that Teresia wasn't afraid of him. The Kremwiden Empire has a warm climate in the west and a cold one in the east. Among them, the Everan Duchy is in the east, so the average temperature is lower than in other regions of the empire. To have a conversation with Teresia, Sebastian was still using paper and a pen. He told her that he wanted to offer her a new smile, but due to the poor conditions in the duchy, he was sorry that this was the only gift he could give. He was referring to a new coat he gave to Teresia. Teresia was speechless upon receiving it. She stared at it and noticed it was kind of large, but for her, it was of better quality than the ones she used to wear. She was confused since she was aware that the financial status of Everan wasn't great, but that they could afford to give her such a beautiful coat. She looked back at Sebastian, but she was stopping her heart from softening. It's unfortunate, but it can't be helped. If I want to avoid catching a cold, I'll have to wear this, she said while looking away from Sebastian. She made up her mind. She'd get disowned faster than anyone else by making herself unpopular with the people of the Duke's family. If she kept acting like a spoiled child who only plays and eats, she believed that everyone would be worried about the future of the Duke's family, which was already dark and would vanish without a trace. She was also thinking about having a big accident around the time of the painting, and by that, she was sure that the ghost Duke would disown her and send her back to her father. She was smiling while wearing the coat, but she was struggling. Sebastian poked her and offered to help her. But she was very stubborn and said she could do it on her own. Still, she didn't manage to do it right and ended up asking for Sebastian's help. Sebastian helped her and said that it looked good on her. She was annoyed upon seeing that Sebastian only rolled up the sleeves to fit her arms. Sebastian laughed without knowing that Teresia believed he was laughing openly because he thought she couldn't see his face. After many hours, they finally arrived. Sebastian got off the carriage first and offered to help Teresia. Teresia refused to accept his offer and claimed she could get down on her own. She got off the carriage and finally landed on the ground. She's observing the surroundings and understands why people are scared of this duchy. She could now say that this place is truly a ghost's den. Ordinary people can't sense the aura of ghosts, but if there are this many gathered, she believes that the people of the mountain will probably feel a strange sense of discomfort and fear. Well, it's none of Teresia's business, but still, she sticks to her plan to be a rude and arrogant child. Teresia doesn't know anything about ghosts or whatever, and now, she senses that Sebastian or the others don't seem to notice, even though one is right next to them. She then concludes that it looks like the people of the Duke's family can't see real ghosts. While heading inside, she feels that the mansion is really strange. When they arrived at the Lord's quarters, Sebastian knocked while informing Valerian that he had brought Lady Teresia. Valerian permitted them to enter, so Sebastian opened the door for the lady. Teresia now saw Valerian's face, and she was impressed upon seeing how handsome he was. She doesn't think she has ever seen anyone more beautiful than her mother. She flinched when she realized she was staring too much. She then smiled widely at him and said, "Hello, Duke. My name is Teresia Oblin." Valerian was smiling at her. He showed his note to the kid so she could read what he wanted to say. He told the kid it was a pleasure to meet her. He gave his name and said he's looking forward to working with her as well. Teresia was speechless at the fact that she could see the consideration in the actions of Valerian. Father said that if we came here, I can eat a lot of delicious food and wear beautiful clothes freely. Is that true? She asked. She thought it would upset Valerian. She concluded that considering the current financial situation, bringing such a lavish child as an heir doesn't seem like the right decision. But then, she was puzzled upon seeing Valerian still smiling. Valerian replied that he may not be able to fully satisfy her, but he would do his best. After all, he's now her guardian. He also asked if he could call her by her name. Teresia was surprised that she didn't make Valerian upset. She permitted him to call her Terry, and he then gave thanks to her for allowing him. Since her mother passed away, no one had called her by her nickname, Terry. She guessed Valerian was half a ghost, so he was not exactly a living person. She flinched once more, so Valerian thought he had shocked the child. He wrote more statements while Teresia thought his writing was so diligent. Valerian asked her if she was fine. He also told her she must rest in her room, knowing she had worked hard to come to his place. She covered her eyes when a blinding light appeared. Valerian really thought she was tired, so he called Sebastian and commanded him to guide her to her room. Sebastian then extended his hand and called Teresia by her nickname. Teresia accepted his hand while still thinking that this place was really strange. They left Valerian's quarters and headed to Teresia's room. She was looking around the room, and a maid introduced herself, saying her name was Mina. Mina asked her if she wanted her to prepare her bed, but she refused. But she was shocked when Mina offered to help her with the preparation. Even though she still refused, Mina helped her with her hair and sleepwear. When she lay down on her bed, she was still surprised that she didn't have to do anything. She also noticed it was a bit early for her to sleep. Then, she realized it would be immature to start training from the very first day. She was blushing when she recalled how soft the people in this place were to her. Mina was still with her. She told her to rest well, believing that she was very tired from her journey. Teresia felt a bit shy. She called Mina and thanked her. Mina was surprised. She was holding the teddy bear and smiled. She told Teresia it was a pleasure to take care of her. She put the teddy bear beside Teresia and wished her sweet dreams. Teresia slept deeply with the bear. She suddenly found herself in dark surroundings. She was wondering where she was, and she was surprised to hear her mother's voice calling her. She was very happy while rushing to her mom. She saw her mother open her arms wide, ready to hug her. But she woke up and realized everything was just a dream. Still, she was glad as it had been a long time since she had dreamed of her mother. She got off her bed and decided to find a place to hide during her class. She still wanted to cause some trouble to get back home. When she opened her room's door, she noticed it was a bit dark, but she was confident it was nothing for her. She even saw a beggar ghost, but she wasn't scared at all. She walked downstairs without noticing that a ghost kid was behind her. She suddenly heard something that startled her. She saw a bear that suddenly fell on the floor. She grabbed it, and she was sure it was the bear Mina had given to her. She was wondering if she had brought it with her. She put it back on the cabinet and convinced herself that she just made a mistake. She left the bear and headed outside. She found a tree and decided to make it her hiding place. Once again, she was startled when the bear appeared behind her. She felt terrified this time. She was shaking while reaching for the bear. The bear turned its head toward her, and she screamed in fear and punched it. The bear was shaking in pain. It stood and angrily said, "What do you think you're doing?" Teresia was scared since it was the first time she encountered a talking teddy bear. She panicked when she noticed that the servants heard the commotion and were checking where the scream was coming from. A few minutes ago, Mina and Sebastian were called by Valerian. Valerian asked about Teresia's behavior. Mina then replied that Teresia seemed tired and fell asleep quickly. But she noticed that the kid didn't seem like someone who lived in a noble household. Valerian was clueless. He asked Mina what she meant by that, and as per Mina, Teresia was awkward about receiving help. According to Mina, for someone who's lived in House Oblin, which is better off than them, Teresia was smaller than others her age and wore clothes that didn't fit her body. Sebastian added that he heard the new Viscountess took great care of the two children, but it seemed the reality was different. He concluded that there must have been a reason why the Viscount's residents sent Teresia to them, and he claimed it was his fault for not looking into the details due to the urgency of the situation. Valerian was silent. He really thought Teresia's bright smile was just that of a cheerful, cute child. He was very curious to know what everyone did to the kid at the Viscount's residence. He then looked at Sebastian and ordered him to send someone immediately to investigate House Oblin, focusing on how Teresia lived there. While the investigation was ongoing, he wanted both Sebastian and Mina to help Teresia adjust well to their place. All of a sudden, the three of them heard screaming. Valerian panicked, knowing that the scream came from his newly adopted child. He was afraid something might happen to her, so he immediately rushed to her room and headed inside. He smiled upon seeing the girl peacefully sleeping and believed she was just dreaming. He covered her with the blanket and told her to sleep well. When he left, Teresia opened her eyes and checked her room to confirm there was no one inside. She felt relieved that she got inside her room before everyone found out she was outside. She was still thinking about the bear, wondering how it moved. She concluded that the bear might be a ghost. She had seen ghosts hiding in objects before, but this was her first time seeing someone like that teddy bear. She crossed her arms and said, "Oh, come on, that's ridiculous." She was smiling until the bear was behind her, calling her attention. She thought she only heard it wrong, but but she was startled when she found out that the bear was behind her. The bear looked at her. They were staring at each other. She suddenly carried it and stated, "Ah, it's my teddy bear. Did you find your way home by yourself? Our teddy must be smart just like me." She hugged it tight and said that her bear might be having a hard time finding its way back home. "Stop pretending you don't know. I saw you get startled by my voice," the bear said. Teresia fakely snored, but the teddy bear scared her by saying that he would tell all the ghosts in the mansion that she could see ghosts if she kept acting. She let him go and got up. She asked the bear what he really was. She was confused about whether it was a ghost and why it was following her. "If you lie, I'll pluck out your eyes," she said. The bear stood in front of her and introduced his name. He said he was Rick, and he believed he was indeed a ghost. Teresia asked if he was the spirit of the teddy bear, but the bear sighed and stated that he had no memories from before entering the teddy bear. Besides the fact that his name was Rick, how he died, and why he was trapped in this teddy bear, he couldn't remember anything. He tried to leave this place like other ghosts, but there was no way out. Teresia felt pity for him, and she was awkward about keeping up with threatening Rick. She crossed her arms and asked Rick why he kept following her. Rick checked the surroundings first, then he replied to Teresia's question. According to him, a ghost close to an evil spirit entered the mansion recently, and then a clueless child was trying to wander outside at night. That was why he couldn't just stand by and watch Teresia, as a matter of human decency. Also, he was planning to scare Teresia just enough to make her return to her room. Teresia was annoyed while asking Rick's age. Rick then replied that there was no point in asking his age right after he had said he had no memories. Teresia then asked another question: how long he had been staying in this mansion. As per Rick, he didn't exactly know, but he thought it had been a little over 4 years. Teresia was shocked and decided she was older than Rick. Rick asked if it was important, but Teresia was also puzzled and said it wasn't really that important. She cleared her throat while thinking there was something more important to know than Rick's age. She told him to tell her more about the evil spirit in this mansion. Evil spirits are dangerous to both the living and the dead. They devour weaker ghosts to increase their power and size, and with that power, they try to take the lives of the living or possess their bodies. They fall into 2 categories. 1, when they can't let go of their grudge before death, and repeatedly cause harm to the living over a long period. 2, when a ghost takes the life of a living person. Teresia was silent, but she knew evil spirits were dangerous based on what Rick said, and she was sure that the category at this rate wasn't the second one. Rick was silent for a moment. Teresia was scared. She was sweating. Rick suddenly claimed he didn't say it was an evil spirit, but instead a ghost close to an evil spirit. Teresia was annoyed and touched his ribbon, asking him to say if it was an evil spirit or a ghost. She scared Rick by saying she would pull his ribbon if he didn't state the fact. Rick then replied that it didn't matter to him, and he told her that a child shouldn't be awake at this hour. He promised to tell her the story if she went to sleep and woke up. Teresia was irritated, thinking that Rick was trying to pick a fight with her. The next day, birds twittering was the noise that woke Teresia up. She slept way too comfortably, but in the end, she didn't find out anything. Today, she wanted to hear the story. Mina came and was glad she woke up early. Teresia then realized that her main priority was returning to the Oblin estate. "Mina, what should I do today?" she asked. She was excited, thinking she might need to study culture or have etiquette lessons. Whatever it was, she was still willing to do her best to ruin it. She looked at the note from Mina and read her response. Mina said she could just relax. She was shocked because she thought she would start her training. Originally, she was supposed to learn about the Everan territory in the morning and have a brief etiquette lesson, which was why she was puzzled. As per Mina, the Duke told her that helping her adjust to the estate came first, so she could take it easy for now. Teresia was dumbfounded. This was not what she thought at all. "That's completely clear, isn't it? Is it totally over now?" she asked. She was waiting for a response from Mina, and Mina then smiled with her reply. "How impressive. Well then, shall we wash up and head to the dining room? I'll prepare your breakfast." Teresia turned around and was disappointed since it was not the response she was waiting for. She flinched and realized what she should do. She lay back down on her bed and covered herself with the blanket. She told Mina that the bed was too soft, so she didn't want to get up. She looked to the side and still saw Rick. When she looked back at Mina, she saw her shivering. She was wondering why Mina was quiet, since she was expecting her to scold her by now. Mina was teary-eyed. She felt guilty and immediately sat up. "Mina, it was just a joke. I'll wash up and eat in the dining room," she said. She felt guilty, thinking that she acted too harshly. She blamed herself, but Mina suddenly grabbed her hand and said, "What did you do wrong, my lady?" She was puzzled about why Teresia was blaming herself. She then wrote on her pad. She told Teresia that she didn't do anything wrong at all, and she told her she would go ask the Duke if she could have her meal in her room. She immediately headed to the Duke without noticing that Teresia was trying to stop her. When she left, Teresia looked at Rick and called him, but Rick didn't respond. At that moment, she was wondering if the Duke would let her eat her breakfast in her bed. She smiled and believed there was no way the Duke would just let his heir have her meal in her room on the very first day after being officially registered. She even bet a finger that the Duke was going to scold her. However, the Duke let her eat her breakfast inside her room, but the Duke ate with her. She was staring at Valerian, wondering if this setup was really fine with him. Valerian noticed her staring, so she immediately grabbed her spoon and fork and then said she would start eating. For now, she decided to just fill her stomach first. She was amazed at the food served to them. There weren't that many dishes, but it looked like the maids put a lot of effort into them. At the Oblin estate, she just ate whatever leftovers she could find. It had been so long since she had eaten food like what she saw now on the table. Her eyes sparkled when she saw pepper. She grabbed it and sprinkled it into her soup. For her, a soup without pepper wasn't real soup. While she was doing this, Valerian was staring at her. She caught him staring, so she thought he also wanted some. She concluded she would be leaving this mansion soon, so she decided she might as well do a good deed. She sprinkled some pepper into Valerian's soup, and Valerian stared at his soup for a moment. He decided to taste it, and Teresia then smiled, believing that the Duke also liked pepper. "Duke, do you have bad eyesight to the point where you need glasses?" she suddenly asked. Valerian removed the glasses from his eyes, and Teresia was impressed that he looked more handsome without his glasses on. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment for another part, and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Till next time.